Hey everyone, welcome back to the podcast where we help you unlock your English fluency, one conversation at a time. Today, we have something special for you. If you've been dreaming of speaking English fluently and confidently in 2025, then stick with us. This episode is exactly what you need.
That's right. We're breaking down 10 powerful skills that will transform the way you speak, listen, and think in English. These skills will help you sound more natural, feel more confident, and finally break through any fears holding you back.
And let me tell you, skill number 9 is one that almost every English learner overlooks, but it's a total game changer. Trust me, once you apply it, your English will never be the same.
So grab a cup of coffee, find a cozy spot, and stay with us till the end. You don't want to miss this. All right, let's dive into the first and one of the most important skills for fluency in English: active listening. Now, a lot of learners think fluency is all about speaking. And while speaking is important, there's one skill that actually makes your speaking easier, smoother, and more natural. And that's listening. Think about this. When you were a baby, did you start talking first? No. You spent months, even years, just listening to the people around you, your parents, siblings, or caregivers. Your brain was absorbing sounds, rhythms, and tones before you even said a single word. That's how language learning works. Now, in English, listening is even more important because English is not always spoken the way it's written. For example, if you read, "What are you doing?" It looks simple, right? But when a native speaker says it fast, it becomes, "What you doing?" If you don't train your ears, you might not even recognize that it's the same phrase. This is why a lot of learners struggle to understand native speakers, even if they know all the words. So, if you want to speak fluently, you need to train your ears to recognize English in real conversations. Not just textbook English, but real, natural, everyday English. And today, we're going to show you exactly how to do that.
Sophia, that's so true. And I want to emphasize something important. There's a difference between hearing and listening. A lot of learners hear English every day, maybe in music, movies, or YouTube videos. But they're not really listening. They're just letting the sounds go in one ear and out the other. Active listening means you are fully engaged with what you hear. You're not just focusing on the words, but also on the tone, speed, rhythm, and pronunciation. Let me give you an example. Have you ever listened to a song so many times that one day you suddenly know all the words without even trying? That's because your brain is naturally picking up patterns. You can use the same technique to improve your English listening. Here's an easy way to practice. Pick an English podcast, audiobook, or video. Listen to a short sentence, then pause the audio. Try to repeat the sentence exactly the way the speaker said it. Same pronunciation, same rhythm, same emotion. This technique is called shadowing, and it's one of the best ways to train your brain to hear and speak English more naturally.
Absolutely. And you can take this a step further. When you're listening, don't just focus on the meaning. Focus on how the words are spoken. For example, in a sentence like, "I didn't see him." The word "didn't" is often spoken so quickly that it sounds like "da'n't," and "him" might sound like "im." So, in real conversation, you'll probably hear, "I didn't see him." If you're not actively listening, you might think, "Wait, what did they just say?" But if you train your ears, you'll expect these changes, and you won't feel lost in conversations. So, here's a fun challenge for everyone listening. Try to catch these small details in your next English conversation or when watching a movie. Pay close attention to how words connect and change, and see if you can hear the difference.
I love that. And speaking of challenges, let's do something fun right now. We're going to play a short audio clip of a native speaker saying a sentence naturally. Your job is to listen carefully and then answer a question about what you heard. Are you ready? Here's the clip.
I gotta go to the store real quick.
All right, did you catch that? I'll play it one more time. Listen closely.
I gotta go to the store real quick.
Now here's the question. Did the speaker say, I have to go, or I gotta go? Think about it for a second. Sophia, what's the answer?
Ooh, great question. The speaker actually said, I gotta go to the store real quick. Now, a lot of learners might expect to hear I have to go, but native speakers often say I gotta go. The pronunciation is smoother and more natural. This is why active listening is so important, because English in real life doesn't sound like a textbook. So, here's another challenge for our listeners. The next time you listen to English, don't just focus on the words, pay attention to how they are spoken. Try to catch the natural way people talk, and your fluency will improve much faster.
Yes. And that brings us to a key takeaway. Listening is not passive. It's an active skill that you have to practice. If you start training your ears every day, you'll notice a huge improvement in both your understanding and your speaking. All right, we've covered a lot in this chapter. Here's a quick recap before we move on to the next skill. 1. Fluent speaking starts with fluent listening, just like how babies learn a language. 2. Active listening means focusing on pronunciation, rhythm, and word connections, not just the meaning of words. 3. Use techniques like shadowing, repetition, and challenges to improve your listening daily. Sophia, do you remember the exact moment when you stopped translating in your head and actually started thinking in English? Because I feel like that's a moment every English learner experiences, and it's a total breakthrough.
Oh, wow, Adam. I remember it so clearly. And let me tell you, it changed everything. Before that moment, I was constantly translating. Every time I wanted to say something in English, my brain would go through this slow, frustrating process. I'd think of a sentence in my native language, then try to find the right English words, and by the time I was ready to speak, the conversation had already moved on. It made me feel so stuck. I knew English. I had studied it for years, but thinking in English was a whole different challenge. Then one day I was watching a movie, and suddenly, without realizing it, I was understanding the dialogue without translating it in my head. It was like a switch flipped. From that point on, I knew that if I really wanted to be fluent, I had to train my brain to process English directly, without using my native language as a middle step.
That's so relatable, Sophia. And I think every English learner has that aha moment when they realize translation is actually slowing them down. It's completely normal at first. Your brain is just doing what it's used to. But if you keep translating everything, you'll always feel like you're one step behind in a conversation. The key to fluency is making English your default way of thinking. And I love what you said about that moment when you suddenly understood a movie without translating. That's exactly what happens when your brain gets used to processing English naturally. But the big question is, how do you train your brain to think in English? A lot of learners don't know where to start.
That's such an important question. And the good news is, you don't need any fancy techniques or expensive courses. The best way to start thinking in English is to use it in your daily life, even if you're not speaking out loud. A simple trick I started with was describing my day in English, in my head. I did this all the time. When I woke up, I'd think, okay, I'm waking up, it's morning, I feel tired. I need coffee. When I walked outside, I'd describe what I saw. It's sunny today. The sky is blue. I see people walking to work. It sounds so simple, but it trains your brain to process English naturally without needing to translate. And after a few weeks, I noticed that my thoughts in English were coming faster. And when I spoke, I didn't have to pause as much to find the right words. It's like my brain started switching to English mode automatically.
Yes, and that's exactly how you rewire your brain for fluency. The more you expose yourself to English, the faster your brain adapts. And you don't even need extra time for this. Just use moments in your daily routine. If you're cooking, think, okay, I'm chopping vegetables. Now, I'm boiling water. If you're driving, think, the road is busy today. I need to turn left at the next light. It's all about making English part of your natural thought process. And another great way to train your brain is by talking to yourself in English. It sounds a little funny, but trust me, it works. Just say your thoughts out loud. Like when you're getting ready for work, say, what should I wear today? Maybe the blue shirt. No, I think I'll wear the black one. Even small things like that help you get comfortable expressing yourself in English without translating.
I love that tip. And I actually do this all the time. When I'm alone, I just start talking about random things in English, as if I'm narrating my own life. And here's the best part. When you talk to yourself, you don't feel pressure. No one is judging you, and you don't have to worry about making mistakes. You can just experiment with words, practice new expressions, and get used to hearing yourself speak English. And over time, it makes conversations feel so much easier because your brain is already used to forming sentences in English. But here's something even more powerful. Train your brain to think in images, not words. This is one of the biggest secrets to thinking in English faster. When native speakers think of a word like apple, they don't think of the word apple. They just see the fruit in their mind. If you can start connecting English words directly to images, instead of translating them from your native language, your thinking speed will increase dramatically.
That's such a powerful technique. And I know a lot of learners struggle with this because they're so used to relying on their first language. But here's an easy way to practice. Right now, wherever you are, look around and try to name 5 things in English without translating. Just see the object and say the word. For example, if you see a chair, don't think of the word in your native language first. Just say chair. If you see a lamp, say lamp. The more you do this, the more natural it will become, and eventually, your brain will start recognizing English words automatically without needing translation.
Oh, I love that challenge. And here's another simple trick. Change your phone and social media settings to English. Think about it. We spend hours every day looking at our phones. If all your notifications, apps, and social media are in English, your brain will start processing English automatically, just from daily exposure. It's a small change, but it makes a huge difference over time. Plus, it's one of the easiest ways to surround yourself with English, even if you're not living in an English-speaking country.
That's such a great tip. And I think this is the perfect place to wrap up this chapter with a quick recap. So, here's what we've learned. First, stop translating by describing your daily life in English, just in your head. Second, start talking to yourself in English to get comfortable forming sentences naturally. Third, train your brain to think in images instead of words. And finally, surround yourself with English. Change your phone settings, listen to English podcasts, and make it a part of your daily life. The more you do this, the faster your brain will start thinking in English automatically.
All right, let's talk about one of the most important skills for fluency, pronunciation and intonation. Now, many learners focus a lot on vocabulary and grammar, and while those things are important, fluency is also about how you sound. It's about the rhythm and flow of your speech. If you speak with the right rhythm, even if you make a few mistakes, people will understand you. But if your rhythm is off, it can make your speech sound unnatural, and that can make communication harder. Think of it this way. Every language has its own unique melody. When we speak English, there's a certain musicality to it. It's not just about the individual words, but how we say them in a sentence. This is what native speakers do automatically. They feel the rhythm of the language. But for learners, this can be tricky. So if you want to sound fluent, you need to practice the natural patterns of English speech. And this goes beyond just saying words correctly. It's about how the words flow together, how some words get emphasized, and how others are almost skipped or softened. For example, listen to how I say this sentence. I'm going to the store. You notice how I naturally connect I'm to going, and to the sounds like one fluid unit. It's not I'm going to the store, it's I'm going to the store. That's how native speakers sound, and that's what we need to practice if we want to sound natural.
Exactly, Sophia. You're spot on. And it's funny. Many learners spend so much time focusing on vocabulary, but they forget that how you say those words matters just as much. Think about it. If you say all the words correctly, but you sound stiff or awkward, people might not feel like they're talking to a native speaker. On the other hand, if you feel the rhythm of the sentence and you speak smoothly, people will think you're fluent, even if you make a few mistakes here and there. That's the magic of intonation. Now, let's break down what you just said, Sophia. When you said, "I'm going to the store," did you notice how the words "going to" almost became "gonna," and the store became "the store"? This happens all the time in everyday conversation. Native speakers blend and shorten words so that their speech sounds fast and natural. But this doesn't mean they're skipping important information. No, they're just being efficient with how they speak. This efficiency is the key to fluent-sounding speech. Here's a great example of what I mean. Listen to me say the sentence naturally. I'm going to the store. Now hear how quickly I say it and how the words merge together. I'm gonna the store. It almost sounds like one continuous thought, right? The way we link these words together creates that rhythm, that flow. This is the kind of fluency we're talking about.
So, Adam, let's give our listeners a little practice. Here's what I want you to do. Repeat after me. Say, "I'm going to the store." Try to say it the way we would in real conversation. Don't say it like a robot, "I'm going to the store." No, instead say it like you're just speaking naturally with a friend. It should sound smooth, quick, and connected. Ready? Let's do it. I'm going to the store. Notice how it almost sounds like, "I'm going to the store." This is what makes English sound natural, these little changes that happen when we speak quickly. When you master this, you'll sound more fluent and confident. And it's not just about these small words. The rhythm of a sentence is about the overall rise and fall in your voice and how you emphasize key words. For example, "I'm going to the store" can have different meanings depending on how you say it. If you say, "I'm going to the store," you're emphasizing where you're going. If you say, "I'm going to the store," you're emphasizing the action of going. See how important intonation is?
Absolutely, Sophia. And that's the thing about intonation. It's not just about how we say individual words, but how we say whole sentences to express meaning. Intonation gives us the ability to show emotions, urgency, or even sarcasm. In fact, the same sentence can completely change its meaning depending on how we say it. For instance, let's take the sentence, "You're really good at this." If I say it like this, "You're really good at this," I'm emphasizing the word really, which shows that I'm impressed. But if I say it like this, "You're really good at this," I'm emphasizing the word good, which means I'm focusing on your skill. See how intonation helps us communicate more than just the words themselves? That's why it's such an important skill to master. Now, here's a great way to practice your intonation. Try listening to English songs or movies, and pay close attention to how the actors or singers use their voices. Mimic what you hear. Don't worry about getting it perfect. The goal is to get comfortable with the natural rhythm of the language. Try to match the flow, the rise and fall of the speaker's voice. It's like singing along to a song. You don't just focus on the words, you focus on the melody.
Exactly. And the more you practice listening to and mimicking natural speech, the more your brain will pick up those patterns without you even thinking about it. So, here's a fun challenge for everyone listening. Next time you're watching a movie or listening to a podcast, pick a sentence and repeat it out loud, just like the speaker. Try to copy the exact rhythm and intonation. Pay attention to the small details, how fast or slow they speak, where they pause, and how their voice rises or falls. The more you do this, the more natural your speech will become. All right, let's talk about something that's super important for fluency, expanding your vocabulary. But let me tell you right off the bat, memorizing long lists of random words doesn't work. If you've tried that, you know it's just frustrating. You can remember the word, but then you can't use it in real conversations. It's like you're studying words in isolation, and that's not how language works. The key is to learn words in context. So instead of memorizing a list of words, focus on how native speakers use those words in sentences. Pay attention to phrases, collocations, and expressions that people actually say in real-life conversations. When you learn a word in context, You'll remember it much more easily because your brain attaches meaning to it in a way that makes sense. For example, let's take the word break. On its own, break is just a word, but when you hear the phrase break the ice, it becomes much more meaningful. You can visualize using it in a conversation. It's more than just a word. It's a tool you can use in real situations.
Exactly. And the best part is, learning words in context helps you sound natural when you speak. You start picking up common expressions that native speakers use, which is a huge part of fluency. For example, the phrase break the ice is one you'll hear a lot in casual conversations. It's used to describe doing or saying something to relieve tension and start a conversation in a friendly way. Instead of just saying, start a conversation, you can use break the ice, which sounds way more natural. And if you've been listening to English speakers for a while, you've probably noticed that they rarely just use single words. They use these common phrases or collocations that make their speech flow smoothly.
Right. And when you learn phrases like break the ice, you also start picking up on how the word is used. For example, when you use break the ice, you're not thinking about the individual words. You're thinking about the whole idea behind it. You understand that it's used to describe starting something in a more relaxed and friendly way. That's how you'll start building up your vocabulary, not by memorizing isolated words, but by learning how they work together. And it's not just about vocabulary for everyday conversations. Knowing collocations can also help you sound more professional when speaking in business settings or interviews.
Absolutely. For example, in a business meeting, you might hear phrases like close a deal or move forward with a project. These phrases are key because they help you speak in a way that's not only accurate, but also appropriate for the context. Think about how different close a deal sounds compared to just saying finish a deal. It's more precise, and it sounds more professional. So the trick is to not just memorize words, but to remember the context they go in, and that's what really builds fluency. So, let's make this fun and practical. Here's a challenge for everyone listening today. Try to use the phrase, break the ice, in a sentence. It could be anything. A casual conversation with a friend, a message to a colleague, or even just practicing out loud. The point is, try to use the phrase in a natural context, so it becomes part of your active vocabulary.
I love that challenge, Adam. And I think it's such a great way to put this into practice right away. And here's another trick. When you learn a new phrase, repeat it. Don't just say it once and forget about it. Use it over and over in different situations. The more you use it, the more comfortable you'll get, and soon it will feel like second nature. That's how you start building up a powerful vocabulary that you can actually use rather than just knowing the words.
Right. And if you're listening to English podcasts, watching TV shows, or reading books, pay attention to those phrases and collocations. They pop up all the time, and the more you notice them, the more natural your speech will become. It's like a shortcut to fluency, learning how words really function in conversations, rather than just memorizing individual definitions.
Exactly. And that's what makes learning English fun. It's not about just memorizing a list. It's about seeing how the words fit into real-life conversations and becoming part of your speaking toolkit. So don't just memorize words, memorize phrases, collocations, and expressions. Use them in your daily conversations and you'll be amazed at how quickly you start speaking more naturally. Now let's dive into something that holds so many learners back. Fear. Fear of making mistakes, fear of sounding silly, fear of being misunderstood. But here's the truth. Fear stops us from growing. Have you ever felt that way, Adam? I know I have, especially early on.
Oh, 100%. I used to be so nervous about speaking in English because I was terrified of making mistakes. I thought every word had to be perfect, and if I didn't sound exactly like a native speaker, people would judge me. But then, one day, I realized making mistakes is part of the process. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. That's when I learned this little trick that really helped me. I actually started making mistakes on purpose. Like, I would intentionally say something wrong in front of people just to get comfortable with it. It sounds strange, but it worked. Because once I started accepting that mistakes are just part of the journey, I felt way more at ease speaking English. So here's the thing, confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from taking action, from speaking, from trying. Even if you make mistakes, you're still improving, and every time you speak, you get one step closer to fluency.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. Confidence comes from action, not perfection. So many learners get stuck because they think they need to be perfect before speaking. But if you wait for perfection, you'll never speak at all. Think about it. When you first started learning English, you didn't know everything. You weren't perfect, but you still spoke. And with each conversation, you got better, even though you were making mistakes along the way. The same applies now. The key is to just speak. Even if you mess up, it's better than staying silent. Each time you speak, your confidence grows a little more.
Exactly. And one of the best ways to build confidence is by practicing in low-pressure situations. For example, you don't need to practice your English in front of a big group right away. Start with small conversations. Talk to a friend, a language partner, or even practice in front of the mirror. The goal is to get used to hearing your own voice in English and to break that fear of speaking. And another trick I learned is to remind myself that everyone is learning, even native speakers. No one speaks perfectly all the time, and sometimes they make mistakes too. So, when I realized that, I stopped being so hard on myself. It was a huge game changer. Because you're not going to be fluent overnight. It's a process, and mistakes are part of that process. So, the more you speak, the more confident you'll become, and eventually, you'll look back and realize how far you've come.
Yes, yes, yes. It's so important to remind ourselves that mistakes are learning opportunities. And here's the truth. Nobody is perfect. Even native speakers make grammar mistakes, forget words, or have trouble explaining something. What matters is that they keep talking. And that's exactly what you need to do as a learner. Keep talking. And here's the real secret. Your mistakes don't define you. They're just stepping stones on the way to fluency. So if you're afraid of making mistakes, try this. Instead of thinking, oh no, I'm going to mess up, think, I'm going to learn from this. Every mistake is an opportunity to improve, and with every conversation, you'll get better. Just speak, and the confidence will follow.
Yes. And I think it's so important to remember that it's okay to start small. You don't have to jump into a huge conversation with a stranger right away. Start with one sentence. Start with a question. Maybe even talk to yourself. No judgment there, right? Just practice speaking out loud. That's the first step to breaking the fear barrier. And over time, as you keep speaking, you'll start feeling more and more confident. And remember, confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from trying. It comes from putting yourself out there, making mistakes, and learning from them. You don't need to be flawless. What you need is to speak. So if you're feeling nervous, just speak anyway. You'll be amazed at how quickly that fear fades away as you gain more experience.
So here's a tip for everyone listening. Confidence comes from action. If you're afraid to speak, the best way to overcome that fear is to start speaking. It doesn't matter if it's not perfect. What matters is that you're trying, and each time you do, you'll get a little better. Speak with your friends, speak with language partners, or even talk to yourself. Every time you open your mouth in English, you're building that confidence.
Exactly. So here's your challenge for today. Just speak. Find a moment today to say something in English, whether it's a sentence to a friend or even just talking to yourself. Don't worry about being perfect. Just speak. Confidence will come from the action, not the perfection. So go out there, speak, and embrace the mistakes. You've got this.
Okay, let's talk about something that's really exciting in 2025, using AI and technology to supercharge your English learning. Honestly, there's no excuse not to be using these tools. We have so many resources available today, right at our fingertips. And trust me, they can make a huge difference in your journey to fluency. AI chatbots, for example, are fantastic for practicing conversational English. You can have a conversation anytime, anywhere, whether you're on the bus, in the middle of your lunch break, or even in bed. The cool thing about chatbots is that they're always available to talk with you, and they can help you practice in a very interactive way. You can ask them questions, get corrections on your grammar, and even ask them to explain things to you in simple terms if you don't understand. This is real practice, not just reading or memorizing. And that's just one example. There are speech analyzers out there that can listen to your pronunciation and give you immediate feedback. If you've ever wondered how your pronunciation stacks up, these tools are perfect for providing that extra level of detail you can't always get from just listening to native speakers.
Exactly. And if you think about it, we've got so many tools that can help with every aspect of English: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. Take voice assistants like Siri or Google Assistant, for example. You probably use them to check the weather or set reminders, but they're also a great way to practice your pronunciation. Seriously, you can have a conversation with your phone, ask it questions, and pay attention to how it responds. The best part? You can ask it to repeat things, and it won't get frustrated. This is a safe, non-judgmental way to practice. Plus, voice assistants like Siri and Google speak clearly and at a pace that's easy to understand. They can be a perfect starting point for improving your speaking skills. Try asking them a question like, "What's the weather like today?" and listen carefully to how they say it. Notice their intonation, rhythm, and pronunciation. This is what you should aim for in your own speech.
Oh, I love that. And think about it. You can use these tools for anything. If you want to work on your accent, you can compare your pronunciation with the assistant's pronunciation. If you're not sure how to say a word, you can ask Siri or Google. They'll repeat it for you, and you can mimic their pronunciation. It's like having an English teacher available 24/7 in your pocket. But it doesn't just stop there. You can also use AI-based language apps to improve your grammar and writing. Some apps can even correct your sentences in real time. So if you're writing an email or practicing your writing skills, these apps will point out mistakes and suggest improvements. This is an awesome way to build your grammar skills without feeling like you're being tested. You're just practicing, getting better, and learning as you go.
Exactly, Sophia. And this goes hand in hand with how we're using technology for feedback. It's one thing to learn new words or phrases, but it's another thing to get immediate feedback on your usage and pronunciation. With AI tools, you're getting instant corrections, which helps you learn more efficiently. And it's not just about speaking or writing either. AI can also help you improve your listening skills. There are apps and programs where you can listen to natural speech, and they'll break it down for you, so you understand every word and phrase. The key is to use technology to your advantage. Don't just rely on textbooks or classes. Use the technology around you. Whether it's listening to a podcast or interacting with an AI chatbot, you're making progress every time you use these tools.
Exactly. It's like we're living in the future, and the future of learning English is right here in the form of these amazing technologies. The trick is to embrace them, use them as much as possible, and don't be afraid to experiment. Technology is there to help you, not to make you feel overwhelmed. And let's make this practical for our listeners today. Here's your challenge. Ask your phone, "What's the weather like today?" and really listen to how it pronounces each word. Focus on the intonation, the rhythm, and how clear the pronunciation is. Then, try to repeat it yourself. It's a great way to practice because you're mimicking a native speaker's voice, and it's something you can do at any time. Just pull out your phone and you're ready to practice.
I love that challenge, Sophia. And remember, don't limit yourself to just one tool. Use a combination of AI chatbots, speech analyzers, voice assistants, and language apps. The more tools you use, the faster you'll see improvement in your speaking, listening, and understanding. Technology is your friend in 2025, so make the most of it.
Exactly. So get creative with it, make technology your learning partner, and you'll see your fluency grow faster than you thought. And don't forget, These tools are meant to help you, so there's no pressure. Just enjoy the process of learning. All right, let's get into something that's really going to boost your fluency: immersion. We often think fluency comes from sitting in a classroom, studying textbooks, or attending lessons. But the reality is, fluency is built outside the classroom. It's about surrounding yourself with the language in your everyday life. The more you expose yourself to English in natural settings, the faster you'll learn.
Exactly. And immersion doesn't mean you have to travel to an English-speaking country. You can create your own English world right where you are. One simple way to start is by changing the language settings on your phone or computer to English. Every time you check your phone, you're reading in English, interacting with apps in English, and getting little bursts of learning throughout the day. Plus, it's such a simple way to get used to reading and understanding English in a variety of contexts.
Such a great point, Adam. And the key to immersion is that it's constant. If you only study for an hour a day but you spend the other 23 hours in your native language, it's going to take a lot longer to improve. But if you make English a part of your daily life, you'll start thinking in English. Watch movies or TV shows in English, listen to podcasts or music, and pay attention to the language around you. When you're watching your favorite show, don't just focus on the storyline. Focus on the language, the expressions, and how they speak naturally. Listen to how they use different words, how they express emotions, and notice how conversations flow.
Absolutely. And speaking of TV shows and movies, try watching them without subtitles or with English subtitles. At first, it might be challenging, but that's actually the point. You're training your brain to understand English in a natural setting. And it's not just about understanding the words. It's also about picking up the intonation, body language, and cultural context that you won't get from textbooks. You start to get a real feel for the language.
Right, and it's not just about watching TV. One of my favorite tips is to talk to yourself in English. Now, I know it sounds a little strange, but hear me out. It's incredibly powerful. You don't need to wait for someone else to talk to you in English. Just describe what you're doing, how you're feeling, or what you're thinking out loud in English. It could be as simple as saying, "I'm cooking dinner right now," or "I'm feeling really tired today." This forces you to think in English, and it helps your brain get comfortable with spontaneous speaking. It's a great way to practice when no one else is around.
I love that idea, Sophia. And I have a small challenge for everyone listening today. Right now, look around you and describe what you see, hear, or feel in English. It could be something as simple as, "I'm sitting at a desk and there's a cup of coffee next to me." The more you do this, the more natural it will feel to think and speak in English. This little exercise helps your brain make that important connection between words and the world around you.
Exactly. Immersion is all about creating opportunities to practice without even realizing it. The more English you hear, see, and speak in a natural way, the more fluent you'll become. And trust me, it doesn't have to feel like studying. It can be fun and part of your daily routine.
That's the beauty of immersion. It's not a heavy, study-filled activity. It's just making English part of your life. So whether you're listening to a podcast, reading an English article, or even chatting with yourself in English, you're constantly learning. You're growing your vocabulary, improving your listening skills, and practicing speaking all at once.
All right, let's wrap it up with one more challenge for you. Describe what you're doing right now in English. It could be something as simple as, "I'm sitting on my couch and I'm listening to this podcast," or "I'm walking down the street and looking at the trees." Try to do this exercise throughout your day, and soon it will become second nature to think and speak in English.
All right, we've shared some amazing skills so far, but now it's time to take things to the next level. These last 3 techniques are not just tips, they are game changers. If you've been following along and thinking, "Okay, I'm learning, but how do I really become fluent?" then this part is for you. These 3 skills will separate you from the average English learner and make you sound confident, natural, and fluent. Sophia, are you ready?
Oh, I'm so ready. And if you're listening right now, get excited, because these next techniques are the secret weapons of fluent English speakers. They're not about memorizing words or studying textbooks. They're about training your brain to use English just like a native speaker. And the first one is a personal favorite of mine, the shadowing technique. If you haven't heard of it before, listen closely because this is powerful. So imagine you're listening to a native speaker. Maybe it's a podcast, a speech, or a movie scene. Your job is to copy them exactly. Not just the words, but the pronunciation, the intonation, the rhythm. You repeat what they say immediately after hearing it, almost like an echo. You're their shadow, hence the name shadowing technique. This forces your brain and mouth to synchronize with natural English speech patterns. It's like training your muscles to move in a new way, just like an athlete practicing the perfect movement. And the best part? You don't even need a partner. You can practice this anytime, anywhere.
Yes, and the reason this works so well is that it's not just about speaking, it's about listening, processing, and producing English at the same time. That's exactly what fluent speakers do. When you shadow a native speaker, you're absorbing their natural speech rhythm. You're not just learning words, you're learning how to say them in a way that sounds natural. And let me tell you, the first time you do it, it might feel fast. You might stumble, miss words, or get frustrated. But that's okay, because every time you do it, your brain adapts. After a few weeks, you'll notice that speaking smoothly and naturally feels automatic.
Exactly. And if you want to really challenge yourself, try this. Instead of pausing after each sentence, try speaking at the same time as the native speaker. It's hard, but it forces your mouth to keep up with natural speed. It's like training your brain to think in English in real time. So, here's a challenge for everyone listening. Pick a short clip, maybe from this podcast, and shadow just 10 seconds of speech. Do it 3 times in a row and see how much better you get. I promise, if you do this consistently, your fluency will skyrocket.
All right, moving on to the next advanced technique, skill number 9, learning from your mistakes. Now, I know a lot of learners fear mistakes. They feel embarrassed when they say something wrong or use the wrong grammar. But here's the truth. Mistakes are your best teachers. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. The problem isn't the mistake itself. It's that most people don't analyze their mistakes. They make the same errors over and over without realizing it.
Oh, this is so important, and that's why I always recommend keeping a mistake journal. It sounds simple, but it's incredibly effective. Every time you notice a mistake, whether it's a grammar issue, a pronunciation error, or a phrase you keep using incorrectly, write it down. But don't just write the mistake, write the correct version next to it. Then, at the end of the week, review your mistakes and practice saying the correct sentences out loud. This helps you actively learn from your errors instead of just repeating them.
Yes, and here's an extra tip. Don't just write your mistakes. Say them out loud multiple times. If you keep saying he go to work instead of he goes to work, don't just correct it once. Repeat the correct version 10 times until it feels natural. And don't stop there. Pay attention to the types of mistakes you make. Are they grammar-related, vocabulary, pronunciation? If you notice a pattern, it means you've found a weak spot, and that's great, because once you know your weak spots, you can fix them.
Oh, I love that, Adam. And let's be honest, native speakers make mistakes too. The difference is, they correct themselves naturally. That's what we want you to do. Recognize your mistakes, fix them, and move on. So here's a quick challenge. Take a moment right now and think of one mistake you've made recently in English. Maybe a word you always mispronounce, or a grammar mistake you keep making. Write it down, say the correct version out loud 5 times, and try using it in a sentence today. Small actions like this lead to big improvements.
All right, now we're down to the final skill. Skill number 10, joining English-speaking communities. This is huge. If you're serious about fluency, you need to start using English in real conversations. You can study all day, but if you're not actually speaking with real people, it's like trying to learn to swim by reading a book. At some point, you just have to jump in the water.
Yes, and the best part, you don't need to live in an English-speaking country to do this. In 2025, there are so many ways to connect with English speakers from around the world. You can join online language exchange programs, find English conversation groups on social media, or even join a community on Discord or Telegram. The key is to engage. Don't just be a silent listener. Start participating, ask questions, and speak as much as possible.
Exactly. And here's something important. Don't be afraid of not being perfect. When you join an English-speaking community, your goal is not to speak perfectly. It's to communicate. It's to practice, make mistakes, and learn from real conversations. Fluency comes from using the language, not from waiting until you feel ready. Trust me, you're ready now. Jump in and start talking.
Yes. And if you're looking for a place to start, here's a challenge. Find one online English-speaking group or forum today, introduce yourself, and start a conversation. It could be on Facebook, Reddit, Discord, anywhere people are talking in English. Just take that first step. Once you do, you'll see how much easier it gets over time. Wow, what an episode. We've covered so many powerful skills today, and if you've made it this far, congratulations. You now have 10 essential techniques to boost your English fluency in 2025. But here's the most important part. None of this will work unless you take action. So let's do a super quick recap before we go.
Yes, here's a lightning round of everything we covered today. 1. Active listening. Train your ears to hear English naturally. 2. Thinking in English. Stop translating and start processing in English. 3. Mastering pronunciation and intonation. Sound natural, not robotic. 4. Expanding your vocabulary. Smartly. Learn words in context, not isolation. 5. Confidence and overcoming fear. Speak without worrying about mistakes. 6. Using AI and technology. Let modern tools accelerate your learning. 7. Immersing yourself in English daily. Make English a part of your life. 8. Shadowing technique. Mimic native speakers for fluency. 9. Learning from your mistakes. Keep a mistake journal and correct yourself. 10. Joining English-speaking communities. Engage in real conversations.
That's 10 powerful skills. But now, here's the big question. Which one will you start practicing today? Don't just listen to this episode and forget about it. Take one skill and put it into action right now.
Yes, and we want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell us, which skill do you think will help you the most? Are you going to try shadowing? Join an English-speaking group? Keep a mistake journal? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one.
And if you found this episode helpful, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more English learning podcasts. We post new episodes every week, packed with tips, real conversations, and strategies to help you speak English confidently.
Absolutely. And make sure to turn on the notification bell so you never miss an episode. We're here to help you on your English journey, and we can't wait to see your progress.
Keep practicing, stay consistent, and most importantly, have fun with English. Thank you.